Thanks for joining me again for another video. It's me, Eric, 26MS DFS, here to recap NFL Week 4, the Millionaire Maker lineups show. Thanks so much. It is Tuesday, October the 1st. I'm filming this show after the Monday night games, Tuesday night now, and just wanted to go over with you my three lineups that I went ahead and entered into the Millionaire Maker contest for Week 4, and a little bit about the builds and a little bit about the recaps of what happened, and just to kind of dive in and kind of debrief, get all Week 4 out of us, and then so we can go ahead and then move on to Week 5. This week I spent a lot of the time researching, watching a lot of podcasts, videos, and starting diving into even more and more statistics. It's really amazing how much information is out there to look into, and there's sometimes you can be overwhelmed with some of the stuff that's out there, and then of course with the salary cap being brought into play, it just makes things that much more interesting. Where you're going to take your lineups and who you're going to play, and correlation comes into play, and then projected ownership comes into play. And what I did this season is I went ahead and then looked at the results from last year's Millionaire Makers, and as well as on Twitter, some of the top names were giving out information on some of past performance of lineups and how they were built, and then I went and then started looking at ownership percentages from the winners of the Millionaire Maker contest last season, and kind of give me like a range of how chalky can my lineups be. So far what I've learned is that the lineups this season are pivoted more so, and the ownership totals have been lower than what the ownership totals had been last year from the lineups that I studied. But it just creates another extra factor to have to account for, and I've been learning more about all these late swapping techniques that a lot of the Roto Grinders guys and other DFSers have been talking about, and it just makes a lot of sense that you have to pivot on to guys if your lineup is not doing so well in order to make it up there into the money or not. Because otherwise, if you have that same chalky afternoon player, there's no way you're going to beat out all the rest of the lineups that are ahead of you. You're just going to stay behind them and lose. Of course, if you're in the money, then you want to play that chalky play, because then you can stay with the field, and then you'll stay in the money. Simple game, right? So anyways, my three lineups that I went ahead and then entered into the Millionaire Maker contest this week were three totally different builds with three different stacks. So what I'm going to do is first go down to, I guess, my third best lineup. I like to say third best and not my worst lineup, because obviously there's a lot of research that goes into these plays, and variance takes you have to take variance into account, and realistically we can go and unpack these and see, like, was this really a better play than this guy or not, and a better use of the salary or not. And if you are using a portfolio strategy, which I do, then your lineups are built a certain way, and the lineups aren't going to have mismatched players from more games, and then you have the high upside most of the time, just like generally speaking. Obviously, in tournaments, if you have all 10 guys go 1% owned and they all go off, then you're going to be as good a spot as you could possibly be. But generally speaking, you're going to have some chalkier guys, you're going to have some lower owned players, and you're just trying to get up to 200 points, generally speaking. So, anywho, didn't get up there, obviously, with these three lineups. And we're going to try to figure out what happened. We're going to try to figure out who was the letdown, who was a good guy, and just kind of give you a little bit of on any given Sunday, really, is kind of my philosophy. You know who's going to potentially get a lot of targets, a lot of touches, but then again, on Sundays, you never know. That guy might get vultured. A running back, per se. It might be the third wide receiver instead of the second wide receiver, and so on and so forth down the line. Oh, and by the way, if you are watching, please subscribe and like and comment and share, because I do not have cable and it's tough to watch film. So if you would like to, please donate to the channel so that I can watch film, so that I can become a better DFS player and learn more about the schemes. Then you know what to do. Just go ahead and then hit that like, subscribe, hit the notifications. I need to be able to watch more film, you guys. So right now it's a struggle, but I'm doing the best that I can. So you guys help me out, that would go a long way. Anyways, into the first lineup. Let's take a look. In 196,570th place out of 249,704, 106 total points, came out to 119.8% total ownership, and it finished in the 78.72 percentile. This lineup started with Russell Wilson, 16.4%, 1 passing touchdown, 240 passing yards, 7 rushing yards. They got up early on Arizona, but Arizona didn't do much of anything. So Russell Wilson didn't have that 4 touchdown and all kinds of rushing yards type of a game that he did the previous week. That's okay. Chris Carson, 5.7%, the RB spot, 41 receiving yards on 4 catches. He added 104 rushing yards, gets the 100-yard bonus. No touchdowns. He was a late pivot off of Penny being announced inactive again this week. So all the touches out of the backfield, and we know that Seattle wants to run the ball, and that's fine. You can have the running back. He just needs to score touchdowns also. And at 5.7% owned, what I actually ended up doing was pivoting off of a lot of Leonard Fournette afternoon to go ahead and then throw in, so I had more shares of Chris Carson. I didn't get all the way off of Fournette in like the low dollar entries where I had 20 entry maxes and other tournament lineups in, but of course seeing Leonard Fournette go for a huge game in the afternoon, it doesn't make you feel good. But 5.7% ownership is really low. Next running back, 4.3%, Devontae Freeman. Did it out of the backfield, catching passes today, 8 catches for 72 yards, and then added 28 rushing yards. I think it's kind of, people are waiting for him to have a huge game at low ownership to go off, so at 4.3% ownership. He gets into the end zone one more time, he gets more rushing yards if they're ahead. Anything can happen. He gets vultured, of course, though, by Ito Smith and the goal line carries, so definitely have to factor that in. But in a home game where they are 4-point favorites, the game script didn't go their way, and Tennessee kept Atlanta from getting very many rushing attempts, and then Devontae Freeman tried to do it for us, but didn't have that huge game. Wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins at 10.8%, 5 catches, 41 receiving yards, and an interception. And I mean, this game did not go as planned whatsoever. Um, Low scoring. I think everybody's been talking about it, how the Texans just cannot protect for Deshaun Watson. And then I was able to watch a little bit of their games this week. I have an antenna, so I'm still able to see when they cut away. So another reason for you guys to help me out with the subscribe. But seriously, 10.8% ownership, had a good matchup. They just were getting to him. Carolina, that is. The Panthers were able to put pressure on Deshaun Watson, and when you're running all day and then you got wide receivers on deep routes, then that's not really going to help so much. The cause, I know in the red zone he's getting a lot of looks though, so just they didn't move the ball well enough. If they got into the red zone, he could have gotten a couple more looks and touchdowns, make all the difference. I ran it back with Curtis Samuel, 6.6%. He gets more of the red zone looks for the Carolina Panthers. 3 catches for 32 yards and 1 rushing yard, so disappointing from him. And then Tyler Lockett was a chalky 23.9% wide receiver. He only got 4 catches for 51 yards, also kept out of the end zone. At my tight end spot, went with Evan Ingram. I just didn't like the Disley call, and with Daniel Jones now quarterbacking for the Giants, and with Saquon Barkley out, I just thought that Evan Ingram and Sterling Shepard, for that matter, we're going to get a lot more looks. I don't know what happened in the second half of that game. It wasn't like any points put up. Seems like I guess they didn't need to with Washington. Funny thing about Washington right now, I'm watching the Amazon Prime All or Nothing NFL series, the second season, when the St. Louis Rams moved to Los Angeles to play in the Coliseum, and seeing Case Keenum start the season as their quarterback, and then have Jared Goff take over the starting job after the Rams were having a not so great season, and then they ended up letting go of Jeff Fisher at the time. I just thought that was interesting how it's happening all over again, seemingly, for Case Keenum. Good quarterback, good pro. I like him from the show. It just seems like, I don't know, maybe the quarterbacks these days coming out are just that much bigger, that much better athletes, and it makes a difference somehow. But hey, I'm a 49ers fan, so we know all about game managers. Alex Smith, Jeff Garcia. I like the short pass. The short pass West Coast offense works good. And shout out to John Gruden. I just finished reading his book, Do You Love Football? That was a good book. And, just bringing back that coaching mentality, football, separating from the fans, separating from just the sports and the statistical standpoint, I think is been fun to see. Him, we'll talk about that later, how they ruined all the Marlon Mack lineups. But just to finish up, another play from this Arizona game, Christian Kirk, 11.7% in the flex, 4 catches for 37 receiving yards, 6 rushing yards. And lastly, the Chargers defense, who were, although on the road, taking on the Miami Dolphins. They finished with 5 sacks, 1 interception, and allowed just 10 points. I've been recently rewatching a channel, but watching new videos, of course, on fantasy football analytics, and talking about how if we want to increase the volatility, which we do in these tournaments, you want to stack, and reading articles about percentages of quarterback, running back, wide receiver 1, so Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, Tyler Lockett, and then return with a wide receiver 1, wait, Christian Kirk's not the wide receiver one. It's Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald does get all the red zone looks, and he's the wide receiver one, but Christian Kirk gets just so many targets that for the PPR it makes a difference. Whereas maybe on FanDuel with the touchdown, only on the half-point PPR, Larry Fitzgerald is going to be the type of player that you want. So, anywho, this lineup stunk. It didn't win me any money. Didn't win me $1 million. Moving on to my second best lineup of the day in the Millionaire Maker contest, not of the day, but just in the Millionaire Maker contest, was Phillip Rivers for the Los Angeles Chargers at 7.2% owned. He had a good day, 310 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. I think they got another one called back on Keenan Allen that I just saw the highlight on, that they called him offensive pass interference. I saw him on Twitter. He was talking about the guy grabbed onto him, and then once he kind of chucked him a little bit, then the guy just fell flat on his back in his back pedal, and then the flag came in late, and then he juked the guy, and I think on the highlight on his Twitter he slow motioned it on the juke because the juke was just ridiculous, and so it would have had another passing touchdown maybe to Rivers, but anyways, he's down here, Keenan Allen, so he got a touchdown taken away. Phillip Rivers 7.2%, stacked with Austin Eckler 29.8%, but he did score 2 touchdowns, 5 catches, 62 receiving yards, 60 rushing yards, a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown. 29.8%. He's not going to vault you ahead of the field, but if you don't have him at $8,000, a guy who gets 3.6x or something like that, it's going to be tough to make that. I mean, obviously, if you have Christian McCaffrey, and you need those from these big players. If you spend up and these guys don't get the numbers that you hope for, then you're really in a bad place. Lineup also featured Chris Carson at 5.7%. We went with Galladay in this lineup at only 13.7% in the Millie Maker. He had 5 catches for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. In a game that Kansas City still pulled out. Amazing. And I was kind of surprised by that game script. Mahomes, no touchdowns, but in the dome, he was just doing all kinds of stuff. This lineup also, Curtis Samuel, 6.6%. Preston Williams in the run back in this Chargers and Dolphins game stack for the Dolphins at 3.5%. 4 catches for 46 yards. I mean, it's so cheap. He's just so cheap. And 3.5%. I'm just going to be looking in the 3K range this week, and that's where you can just get these 18 to 20 point games from a 3K player, and then have every single salary available to get guys like Austin Eckler and Christian McCaffrey that you could hope for. And then it seems kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of lame, like, if I'm being honest, but then again, it's what gets you the most fantasy points. It's not, I don't actually agree with this play, it's just happened to work out, dumb luck. And there's garbage time, there's game scripting, some of these defenses are terrible, so you just have to factor all that in, and leave your biases at the door. Evan Ingram again, 23.6%. And Keenan Allen, 5 catches for 48 yards. Like I said, he had that long touchdown called back. And at 38.3%, it just wasn't really smart to play this guy. But as far as in this lineup, you are increasing the chances, increasing the volatility with stacking, and then increasing the chances of your uniqueness, given that, well, people are of course going to stack Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen, and then maybe even then some people are also going to throw Eckler in, and then then you're talking about very few people who are talking about a 3-man stack and a run back of Preston Williams on the Miami side. So obviously Devontae Parker, I think he was talked up on an article that I saw as a GPP play, tournament type play. I just was like, this guy hasn't shown me anything. And then, of course, I guess it's all about the matchup. So he scored a touchdown. But whatever. And lastly, the Panthers defense. 6 sacks, a pick, a fumble recovery, and only 10 points given up against Houston at 6% ownership. That was a pretty good play. Last but not least, my best lineup of the Millionaire Maker contest. Let's dive into it. Seriously, guys, 3 seconds. Take 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Just go ahead and hit that like. That's literally all it takes. You're watching this video. Thank you so much. Again, really appreciate it. Hope that I'm providing you some easy to digest content with NFL. I'm also going to be doing some golf videos coming up. The Safeway Open just wrapped up in beautiful wine country, Napa, California. Just about an hour away from me here. Of course, didn't make it, had to work, but I'll make it out there sometime soon. And I hear the local guy, Cameron Champ, took it down, so now everybody in the golfing world can play more Cameron Champ highlights. So last lineup to go through. My best lineup, 155.3 total points. Oh, by the way, that last lineup at the 134.4 total ownership, and that was a 16 point, and that finished in the 16.23 percentile. So that was in the money. Both of these two were in the money, and this top lineup had 140.8 total percentage owned, and it finished in the 8.54 percentile. So the highest owned scored the most points for these 3 lineups. Patrick Mahomes, 23.1%, 315 passing yards, chipped in 54 rushing yards, got the 300-yard bonus, no touchdowns like I said. So it didn't really bode well because I double stacked. There was a similar build for all these lineups. It was a 3 going one way and then 1 coming back the other way. This one was 2 wide receivers though. Sammy Watkins at 20.8% owned, 3 catches for 54 yards and a fumble. And Demarcus Robinson at 10.8% owned, 4 catches for 35 yards. We already knew that Patrick Mahomes didn't have any passing touchdowns, so we know that these guys weren't going to have any touchdowns. The better running backs of my 3 lineups, Wayne Gallman Jr. taking over for Saquon Barkley, 16.2% owned, at home against the Washington Redskins. 6 catches for 55 yards, 63 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 1 receiving touchdown, and then a fumble, -2. Great stat line. I had many of Daniel Jones' stacks in the low dollar tournaments with Sterling Shepard, with Evan Ingram, with Wayne Gallman, all the matchups. So some lineups were doing pretty good, and was making for a pretty good morning in some other tournaments. This one had Christian McCaffrey, 21.2% owned. I mean, this guy, 10 catches out of the backfield for 86 yards, 93 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. So huge day from Christian McCaffrey. 21.2% owned, with around that on average in these tournaments, or maybe slightly more, 23%, 24% getting paid out. So, I mean, Christian McCaffrey was a good play. Kenny Golladay once again made this lineup. He was good. Ran back in this Kansas City Chiefs versus Detroit Lions game. Then we went with the punt of Dontrell Inman. I guess he had to leave the game for something, but we knew that Keenan Allen was going to be highly owned. Then we knew that Mike Williams wasn't going to make it back this week. Then we knew that Travis Benjamin, yes, Travis Benjamin, I will play him at some point this season, maybe, was also out. Their tight end, Hunter Henry, we know was out. And then there was the running back, his name is escaping me just off the top of my head. He was out. And then that Melvin Gordon was going to be back playing this game. But then it was, oh, okay, you're not really going to play him this week, though. So don't worry. You play Eckler and stuff. So then Inman, opens up a spot for Inman. 8.2% owned. 5 catches for 76 yards. Like I said, I'm going to be living in this 3K area so that I can get every player that I hopefully want in the future. And Evan Ingram was the tight end, and Sammy Watkins, and Titans defense, which is funny because a lot of these defenses that were thrown in there were road dogs, but then they ended up winning the game, like in Carolina at Houston, and then Tennessee at Atlanta. 5 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, and only 10 points given up against the Atlanta Falcons. So, basically a slightly down week, mostly break even, all tournaments. If I played cash games, then you got to think that probably would have lost, right? Honestly. No, we'll see. I don't know, 50-50, something like that. But we went with the higher variance, just to recap everything. We went with the higher variance in these lineups by stacking. We stacked the quarterback with the wide receiver 1. We ran it back with the wide receiver 1. We had RB1s in these lineups, or wide receiver 2s, and then we're running it back. We went with a higher price tight end. We went with some punt plays at wide receiver, and then we were able to get some pretty good running backs in there also. Just depends. You kind of mix and match, see what fits, see where it goes. And I guess the biggest surprise of the week was I guess how that Rams game went, and Jameis Winston was the winner was on the lineup of the Millionaire Maker winner. We might as well go ahead and then go through that lineup. Actually, I lied. It was the second place guy, of course. But that game, I had plenty of golf stacks. But that game was just ridiculous how Chris Godwin had such a huge game, and then all those turnovers for Goff and the Rams, and how they were huge favorites. And then, I mean, the 49ers beat the Buccaneers in Tampa, and then the Rams lose to the Buccaneers in LA. So now the 49ers are 3-0 and they're in first place. So there's a whole lot of going on there. But on any given Sunday, any team can lose, and I still do think that the Rams are a much better team than the Buccaneers. But then again, hey, maybe, who knows? I mean, Dominican Sue, right? Maybe there was something there. Jared Goff, 4% owned, 517 passing yards, 3 picks, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 fumble. He paired him up with Cooper Kupp, 16.5% owned, 121 yards, 1 touchdown, 9 catches. Ran it back with Chris Godwin, Tampa Bay, who was on the injury report all week, but makes sense that he was the one to go off, him and O.J. Howard, playing out of the slot versus the better cornerbacks from the Rams. So, 0.7% owned, gets that injury bump, gets that late swap bump, throw him in there. Nick Chubb from the early games, I mean, that was ridiculous. I think a lot of people were on Mark Ingram. I was on Mark Ingram, not just because he had huge games before, but because they were 7-point favorites at home, 6-point favorites at home. And, Nick Chubb just goes off for 165 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 catches for 18 receiving yards. Throws in David Johnson, and I guess they're throwing it to the running back again. Arizona, never know what they're going to do. Apparently, 40 rushing yards only, but 8 catches for 99 yards. And there's a double stack. Missed Robert Woods down here, and huge game. 13 catches. He was getting targeted all over the place. 164 yards. And Disley, the chalk tight end, 27%, but he gets in that end zone. It wasn't DK Metcalf, wasn't Tyler Lockett, it was Will Disley. And then great play with Cortland Sutton in the flex. He was like a late swap kind of a play as well, with Jalen Ramsey not going to be playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then I could just see Denver at home. They're going to be able to move the ball. So, like, you could have pivoted onto Cortland Sutton or Emmanuel Sanders. Noah Fant was one guy who kept popping up in lineups earlier in the week. So, Cortland Sutton 1.3% owned. And the Patriots defense, 5 sacks, 4 picks, a touchdown, and a block. Only gave up 10 points to the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. This 4-double. Congratulations to you, sir. You had 127 lineups, looks like, in there. And that's going to do it for you guys for the Week 4 Millionaire Maker recap show. We're going to be going at it again, like I said, for golf. We're going to be going at it again for NFL. Please subscribe. I need to watch more film. I don't know how I'm going to compete with guys like 4-double and his Nick Chubb lineup when I don't have cable and I can't watch film. So please go ahead and then subscribe and like the video. Comment down below what you liked in my lineups. Comment down below what are you doing for stacking. Comment down below what is the just comment down below who your favorite team is. I mean, I'm trying to get this thing up and running, and there's just so many different ideas flowing out there, and you could be the one to help out. So anyway, shameless plug. Go follow my Twitter at EricSullivan79. You can see me on there. Trying to do good things over there, posting about sports and feel-good stories. There's so much out there, making sure that you're not filling your head with the crap, instead filling your mind with the good stuff. So anyways, thanks so much for watching, you guys. Have a good one.